Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, ranking members. And thank you to our witnesses for coming in today. In reviewing the testimonies and in my short time here listening to both sides of the aisles, it's very interesting to me. One document, the Dodd-Frank, with so many different interpretations and opinions and purposes. But one common thread that I've listened to from my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, going back to our districts, how do we explain this? Consumers has been mentioned by everyone. So, in problems. So, for me, I put in achievements of Dodd-Frank. So, I'm not sure if you are aware of, since the passage of it in February of 2010, nearly 12.3 million private sector payroll jobs have been created. Something pretty good to take back to your districts. Further, our economy has added 3 million new jobs over the past 12 months, and nearly the fastest growth in more than a decade. Yeah, those are achievements of the Dodd-Frank, because I think it also created the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Since its inception, the Bureau has returned $5.3 billion to 15 million consumers who have been subjected to unfair and deceptive practices. So where I'm going with this, since I repeatedly hear attempts to block the appointment of having a director or to move it towards an independent funding source. So, Mr. Staley, first with you, as this committee moves forward with its oversight and financial regulatory agency in drafting financial services legislation, what do you think we can do to ensure that CFPB is able to continue its legislative mandate and be fully funded?
Frankly, I think the structure that currently exists in the Dodd-Frank Act, which provides it with dedicated funding from the Federal Reserve, as the other financial regulators receive, with the exception of the CFTC, they are self-funded and not within the appropriations process. I think maintaining that is very important. And frankly, I think that the structure of a single director helps the CFPB act quickly and forcefully when it sees problems. So I think that maintaining that structure in the Dodd-Frank Act would be is very valuable.
And to the other witnesses, if there were not the Dodd-Frank Consumer Protection Bureau as it is, how would you counter these achievements and wonderful statistics that it's been provided to do?
Well, it is, of course, hard to run the experiment and go back and say what would the economy look like today without Dodd-Frank. We unfortunately lack the ability to do that. And I would just say that everyone believes that it would be wonderful if we could come up with a way to reduce the likelihood of future financial crises. And Mr. Stanley, I think, did a very good job of quantifying what it would be like if we could reduce the likelihood of future financial crises. Unfortunately, I see no evidence whatsoever that Dodd-Frank is going to do that. I think, in fact, there's a very good chance that it will make future financial crises more likely because it is concentrating risk, for example, of derivatives transactions in a new too-big-to-fail entity, a centralized counterparty. It is going to, I think, inevitably force more activities under the umbrella of the too-big-to-fail banks. And I think by doing
because
that,
my time is short, let me piggyback and ask you a question on that. I think you said in your testimony that Dodd-Frank misunderstands the causes of the financial crises and in particularly blames monetary policy, federal housing policy, and moral hazards created by government bailouts. So in your opinion, what were the main causes of the recent twin housing and financial crisis?
I think the cause of the housing and financial crises had in part to do with government policy. They had in part to do with the fact that banks that tried out new forms of mortgage loans that were not very well tested. Those turned out to not work as effectively as the banks thought they would. And in a well-functioning market, the banks that did that would have been allowed to fail. That wasn't what happened here.
The gentlelady's time has expired.